Hey guys, this is T Gray. Welcome to another episode of Good Genes, Bad Guts. Today we're going to continue on the topic of symptoms. However, we're going to drill down into my specific symptoms. And I've broken my specific symptoms up into two categories: the early symptoms and the advanced symptoms. Reason being, I was misdiagnosed for about 18 months, the better part of 2 years. So for almost 2 years, I was told things that individuals who suffer from ulcer disease, I didn't know ulcers were considered a disease either until I read my medical chart, but they are. So in my initial upper endoscopy in October 2014, I had about a dozen stomach and duodenal ulcers. The doctor didn't get it. He didn't get that many ulcers and inflammation, because I also had very prominent inflammation as well. He said verbatim, "Your GI tract looked like it's been run over by a Mack truck." His words, not mine. But all the same, that's the reason I'm spending probably more time than the average Crohn would on symptoms, because mine weren't recognized, because they started with the upper GI, and the upper GI symptoms are far more subtle. So today we're talking about my early symptoms, which will be focused on the upper GI, but you'll hear some of the same symptoms that you heard if you watched my sort of general symptoms video. Let me preface this by saying, from high school, late high school, college, undergrad days, I started to experience just general digestive issues, if you will. Maybe hypoglycemia shouldn't be considered a digestive issue, but I suffered from hypoglycemia. So if I'm hungry and my blood sugar drops too low, I can get headaches, eye aches. I become uptight. I become rigid. I used to become quite mean. I've worked on that, so that's no longer a problem. It's called self-control. It comes with maturity. But the point is, I just had sort of, ever since like my late teens, early 20s, there's always been something going on with me digestively. And it was generalized gastritis, as the doctors called it. So if you've gotten that diagnosis as a young adult, put that back here. Don't dismiss that, because it may or may not mean something. Listen to what I have to say and then you decide. So one of the most prominent symptoms that I experienced, well, two, because they sort of go together: diminished appetite and weight loss. I started out at 140, and over the span of about 6 months, I didn't realize it, but everyone around me realized I'd lost about 15 pounds. So I was down to 125 pounds. So that weight loss and diminished appetite, that actually was occurring at the same time for me as upper abdominal pain. So as I mentioned in a previous video, right below the solar plexus, or that right below that hard, like your breastplate right there, there's this little soft region, and it's where your stomach is. And that area right there, every day, without fail, between 5 p.m. and 8 p.m., a dull, radiating, pulsating pain started every day. I mean, that thing came up like the sun. And I tried to ignore it. I might be on business travel. It was going to happen. I could be at dinner with colleagues or clients. It's going to happen. I could be on the tennis court, drilling. Happen. I was aware of it. I didn't know what to do about it, so I ignored it. What happens when bad matters are left unattended? They worsen. Which brings me to my next chronic symptom: early symptom. Nausea. Again, because I was viewing all of these symptoms in a vacuum, meaning I was viewing them independently. I didn't think one had anything to do with the other. So I would feel chronic nausea. Something started to happen that I really didn't know what to do with, and I ignored this too. It happened several times. I was working. Within 30 to 45 minutes of eating my lunch, I literally felt my gag reflux engage. And I was like, oh, I know what this means. So I just reached for my trash can. I sat it in my lap. I didn't have time to close my door. And I upchucked in my trash can. I sat it down. I made my way to the director of facilities and whispered, how do we dispose of biological waste in the office? And she took care of it and I went back to work. So if you're just throwing up out of the blue and just going back and doing what you were doing, that's not normal. That's a problem, okay? Make a mental note. I don't believe I'm sitting on camera talking about this, but here we go. My primary care physician, Dr. Marisha Brady, she subscribes to a holistic approach before she seeks the assistance of conventional medicine. That's why I love her so much. And I identified that I had one duodenal ulcer and one hemorrhoid. Let me just pause right there. My mama raised me to be proud. I just need you to understand how much courage it takes for me to sit here and tell you that I had an ulcer and a hemorrhoid. Like, that's not something I want somebody to know. Please understand I'm doing this for your health, because my ulcer and my hemorrhoid are taken care of now, and I could have lived my life without sharing that information publicly, but I'm doing it because it's actually indicia of a bigger problem that some people don't realize. Ulcers are typically caused, well, if you Google it, conventional medicine will say H. pylori bacteria is a common cause, excessive smoking, excessive drinking, and I believe prolonged use of non-steroidal anti-inflammatory medications. I didn't fit into any of those categories. I tested negative for H. pylori bacteria. I wasn't a smoker. I didn't drink excessively. I wasn't on any medication. As a matter of fact, as a general rule, I don't take medication. The cause of my ulcer was unknown. I have to give tremendous credit to Dr. Marisha Brady. She's my primary care physician. She's located in Arlington, Virginia. She's freaking amazing. From the earliest point, that was probably 2009, 2010, she called it. She said, you have a form of leaky gut. I don't know which form yet. Leaky gut is a progressive term or functional term for a condition that conventional medicine, I think, refers to as intestinal permeability. That's when you just have little perforations or holes or compromises in the mucosal lining of the GI tract. Adrenal fatigue. When you exist in a prolonged state of fight or flight, your adrenals, they get tired. People who have anxiety, you're at a higher risk for things like Crohn's and autoimmune diseases and adrenal fatigue for that very reason, because anxiety is a type of fight or flight. If you're familiar with that condition or with that state of being, that's when the body diverts all of the blood and essential sort of nutrients to your extremities, to your feet, to your hands, to your eyes. So you can either get the hell out of Dodge or throw them hands. Like whatever your choice is, that's what you do. Well, the body's not designed to exist in that state for extended periods of time, as in years, which was my case because I had anxiety and I didn't know it. So adrenal fatigue, that was one of the symptoms. Again, as early as 6 to 8 years prior to actually being diagnosed, I was diagnosed with adrenal fatigue. This is sort of the last set of my specific symptoms, but there's a group, and it has to do with food intolerances that developed later in life. They weren't an issue as a child. I began to notice in my mid-ish 20s, around the same time that these symptoms, or late 20s, around the same time that these symptoms were developing, that I developed an intolerance for gluten, dairy, and sugar. I noticed that when I ate any of those three, I felt yucky. I felt lethargic. I was given to sinus infections, intense allergies, and chronic and debilitating allergies, and just a general sort of like malaise. I just didn't feel good. And so I eventually took them out, which I felt better. So because I felt better, I didn't feel inclined to pursue the matter any further. And that's where I'll stop for today. And I'll pick up with advanced Crohn syndrome. Advanced Crohn symptoms. Thank you again for joining me for another segment. Please, 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 if you care enough, follow me on IG. As always, please, please, please give me your feedback. Let me know if you had a similar experience, if what I'm saying is so far afield that you don't even know what I'm talking about. Just anything, any feedback you have, let me know. Please, please, please subscribe. And last but definitely not least, hold on, keep pushing. I know you got this. We'll talk.